My name is Max. I work at Inspira. I am a developer for Inspira Craftworks, where I do some contract work. But I'm also a developer for Loomio, which very briefly is an open source project about online decision making. It's really simple. The idea is people have conversations, someone puts up a proposal, and people vote on it, and then they can modify their votes. And the iterative solution is going to work for everyone, I believe. So, I'm using Loomio as a context to talk about internationalisation, which is the process of making your app internationally accessible. Usually this means just translating it, I guess. So I'm going to talk about a translation gem called I18N. Everyone's got an easy way to say it, and what they say it. First, maybe a little bit about why translation is really important. For us, in our particular context with Loomio, it's really important because we believe one of our core values is accessibility. We want as many voices to be able to be part of decisions that affect them. And to do this, it means making the tool not a barrier to them engaging with the community. Yeah, so this is Loomio, this is the front page. Please be good. And that's it in Korean. And that's Google Translate being helpful. And so Korean's a supported language at the moment, and we've got Macedonian as of last night when, well, it's an experimental, so I'll get into that in a moment. So, I've got my sort of to-do list to cover. So, how it works. So basically, it's not that fancy. Like our setup is like as simple as it could be. Rails comes packaged with I18N, as in with translation support set up. And here's what the translations look like. Basically, is that big enough? Let's make it bigger, right? Too big, maybe. So, error access denied translates into you do not have permission to do this. So you might want to use that in a lot of places in the app. An example, so on the front page, here's the front page. Here's a piece of code where you would call a translation key. T just stands for translate. And then front page link blog goes straight to, if your language is English, was it front underscore page? Okay, front page. Okay, great. This is what I should have prepared slides earlier. Blog, wasn't it? Yeah. Front page link blog is just surprisingly the word blog. So not very interesting. In practice, in English, what this means is you end up with slightly less readable code. One of the advantages in English is that if you do have something like an error message and you want to change it in lots of places, or a piece of repeated text, like you always want to have the word back on a page, it's really easy to have that abstracted out. And if you ever wanted to change it, as in go to the previous page or go home or something like that, you can just change it here. When it comes to translating this into Spanish, they get exactly the same pink text or keys, that is. The lookup values stay the same, but then the translated text is different. So that's pretty straightforward. So sorry, I didn't mention that this is what's called a YAML file. It's just a way of organizing a bunch of keys, like lookup values, and the indenting is nesting, as in this value here, to look it up, you would say es, as in Spanish, try it, header, and then that would give you that value.
Does it format through, like, if you don't provide Spanish for the coding?
Yeah, good question. So, one of the features of Rails is you can, in the app, in the application controller, you can set the, on any request, you can set whatever the language is of the user. Set application level locale is just a broad before filter. Or if there's a user signed in, you can just grab their setting and plug that in. And that means that you don't ever have to put ES on the front, and it just will go and look up the appropriate language for that user. If there doesn't happen to be a key for Spanish, because the Spanish translation isn't finished, it will fall back to a default, usually English in this case. Okay, so how it works. So that's a simple case of translation. There are a lot of other cases which are more complicated. Where you might want to reuse the same sort of sentence, but, so for example, this one here, message placeholder, write a message to the member of which group. So you'll see there's some code-like looking stuff in here. What that does, enables us to do is something called interpolation, which means take that general pattern, but insert a specific piece of text within that. And so when you call that in the code, you just call the normal key, so it'd be English dot something, or in this case, en dot message placeholder. And then you just go comma, and then you define what which group is going to be. So which group could be mixes flat warming, or Rails Girls 2014 or something. And then when it prints that out on the screen, it'll just like interpolate that, chuck it in. So those are basically the two functions of 18N. There are a few like other tricksy things, but yeah. So we've already covered set default locale. So I want to talk a little bit about what our workflow is, like how this has been so powerful for Loomio, and how it's enabled us to like translate our app pretty much into 24 languages maybe now. So we're using this tool called Transifex, which is free for open source projects, and the user interface looks like this. So the user doesn't see any of that pink text. All they see is a copy of the English key. So they click on it, they're like, oh, I want to translate this one today. And they're like, oh, here's the English, and there's what it is in Spanish. And I could disagree with this user and change this if I wanted to. Save or review. And then they go on to the next one. So Transifex is really user-friendly. You can just find translations which haven't been completed and work your way through them. And then at our end at Loomio, once the like periodically we would just go through and download the YAML files. So download these files, or the foreign language versions, and just load those into the app, and they're ready to go pretty much.
So sorry, did that just hop into your GitHub?
Yeah, so there is a little bit of trickery. So I'm over here at GitHub and so there's the master language as set up by for our particular app is English, and so Transifex over here says, can I have your master file? And so periodically it syncs, it grabs a copy of the English file, and then the translators go, oh, there are some new keys, some new strings to translate. Welcome to Loomio, or we are crowdfunding, or whatever. Then they translate them, and then the final step is we download them again and stick them into the app. We stick all the foreign ones in.
They don't automatically commit it back to your code base?
No, not at this stage.
Is there Is it professional translators or is it just...
No, this is open source.
Right. Is it featured? Can I go on here and go, ha ha ha?
Yeah, you can, yeah, totally. So that isn't something that we're totally running like minimum test set up on this. Generally the people that come in and want to be translating actually care quite a lot about community, so we haven't had any complaints like this is really offensive, have you seen what they've translated yet? That day probably will come, but we'll build for it when it happens probably. So here are the trans.
Sorry, go on, question. Is it
go.
only? Is it like businesses use it?
Transifex, yeah. So you can, it's kind of a little bit like GitHub in that you can pay for a private translation sort of repository.
Yeah.
And it's got other useful features like we recently did do a crowdfunding campaign. We did want what we said to be really reliable. It was possible to say, okay, here's the video that we want translated, and you can go in here and go order translations from professional translators, and there are like different brackets, like here's the cheap translation, here's the more expensive, like the 1,000 words, whatever. It's got a few things which I would change, but on the whole, this is an amazing tool. You can see all of the languages are at different states. They all tend to decay because our language is continuously evolving.
I think there used to be a gem called Translate, and I don't know if it's not been upgraded or anything, but it does a similar process. It's not as nice, but it does the same process, and you can do that, add it as a development gem, and do your translation and local development. So perhaps there's
right. So this is powerful because you don't need a development environment. You can, it's Transifex that's completely separate.
You can actually set it up in production. Say you set up a staging server somewhere, and you could have single password on the whole site. But I was also going to make a point that even if you're doing single language sites, it's useful to use this if you expect your text to change often, because you can essentially give one file of the translations to a non-developer and sort of give them an orientation. They can change it. You can take that change back, and it doesn't have. They don't have to touch the source code of the views or the controller.
It's a little bit like CSS for language, kind of. Like abstracting everything a little bit out gives you a lot more control.
Do you have any kind of handle around messages changing size? like one word in English becomes like 100 Spanish words maybe, and like, well, this is destroyed my page.
Yeah, there is some word flow stuff, mainly on the front page, that we worry about that.
Doesn't Miles have stuff for using different view files for different languages?
I haven't exposed that yet.
Asian English is shorter and fuller, essentially.
Yeah.
And then there's also languages that are right to left.
Right to left, yeah. Okay, so you're exploring all of the gotchas, which I was going to go through. Which is great, you're thinking ahead of me, that's great. Right to left is one problem. Another problem in a similar vein is different grammar. So is it, I've forgotten, like verb, noun, object, noun, verb, object, or some combination. And then how do you do that with translation? Because especially when interpolation comes in, like Mix invited you to join, Rails girls might in Japanese come out as Rails girls, Mix invited you. So interpolating can get complicated, especially when you're like putting dates or, it gets a bit weird. So our workflow is we pull in language files from Transifex, I think that's where we got to. And then we've just got a master list of languages which, so we, by default at the moment, we actually just pull in all of the files, and then we just have a list of languages which are approved to be live. And so these are the selectable languages, or detect. And then there's these other experimental ones. So you saw me activate the front page in Macedonian. You can only do that through typing special codes or params in the in the address bar. But that's just so people can see their work in situ, see how it looks, or because sometimes the context, it helps to have context.
So you assume that people wouldn't want to go back and forth between, if somebody's bilingual and they want to, I've done a project where we've done crowdsourcing on the site, that the content, crowdsourcing of the translations, but for the content, not for the UI, which is another issue.
That's another thing, yeah.
That the people doing the translation might want to switch locales, and that simply is just changing the URL, but having, I guess, so you're saying you only can do it by doing URL surgery. So,
when it's an experimental phase,
right.
But I mean, like, there's a drop down where you can say, like, right at the bottom of on the footer of every page, you can go Macedonian once it's live, as one of these, like, main supported languages.
Okay.
Does that also support the header, except, in NZ, does it actually be header that provides languages and
there's the before filter does a few smart things. It checks if there's a current logged in user in our context. If it is a user and they have selected a language option, then it uses their language option and ignores the header. If they haven't selected a language, then it reads the header and then tries to make an educated guess, which is like a little bit messy sometimes. Yeah. Some tips. I guess kind of like everything, having good keys is going to make your life a lot easier. It's going to make your code more readable. There's a little bit more to just saying good keys, as in like choose good pink text that makes sense. 18N has some like fancy stuff where you can actually leave off a bunch of the keys. So like if it was in we didn't know this when we started building it, but if you're on a page and it happens to be a warning page, like the view is, like lumio.org/warning/ and then you're on that page, you can leave off a bunch of the key and it will deduce based on which view you're in, which key that you're looking for.
So yeah, you just start the key with dot and then the last segment.
Yeah. Tips, interpolation. I don't know what I was going to say about that. Fallbacks. There's a good. I'm not going to go into it, but there's a nice function where you can, if you do want to change your code at some stage. Sometimes if you change a translation or you delete a translation because of delays in translation across languages, like English is obviously up to date. Spanish is, we've got like a dedicated translator, but we're not paying anyone for Macedonian, we don't have someone who's really into that right now. You can say, you can define a fallback. You can say, here's the preferred translation, if not, fallback to this one. So that's nice to know about. You can put HTML inside of these values, these translation values. Like if I wanted to make this bold or something, scroll, you can do that. By default, 18 is smart and will print that as a string because you don't want translators inserting JavaScript or anything like that. But you can tell 18 that it's HTML safe basically by putting that on the key. That's useful to know about. Sorry, say it again?
It's sanitized, right? Still?
Yeah, I don't think so.
No. So you could put underscore HTML on one of the pink things, upload it to the translation website, someone else would be able to see the key as. Do they see the keys?
They can look for the keys, yeah.
Right, so they'd say, that's got underscore HTML on it.
Yeah. So this,
I'll put some.
every 24 hours or whatever, it pulls the English, the current thing from GitHub, which, unless you're a contributor to Loomio project or you've got sort of merge permissions, then it's not going to get into the master English translation file. So it won't be able to get over to TransFX.
So someone can figure out, though. You
can look through. I mean, there are probably some keys that you could have used. So these are tips, like things to know, and this is kind of a gotcha as well. Like, just glance over the translations, make sure there's no JavaScript.
So what you're saying is don't just accept something from some place on the internet. Yeah. Look at your pull requests. Yeah.
Whatever language.
So gotchas, interpolation keys. It's really problematic if you go and change your interpolation keys, because if I change in English this this interpolation key, the code, the app is going to look for, when it loads up that string, it's going to say, hey, I've got the link text that you wanted me to put in there as a variable. I'm just going to interpolate it, inject it. But then, like when we go over to Spanish, if the interpolation key is different, as if it hasn't been updated, it's still this, the app will go, give me the Spanish translation. I will insert the key now, like the interpolation variable now, and it'll be like, where am I inserting it? And it just breaks the app. Like IATN doesn't have a good way to deal with that. It just goes, and then like throws a bunch of errors, and the page is like a horrible experience. The user doesn't see anything. So that's something to know about. It breaks translations. You just need to be careful about changing your translations for similar reasons. Another gotcha is that different languages treat numbers and counting differently. An example is Indonesian. Rails has this really cool, smart thing where, so here's an example of interpolation. You've just invited a number of users, count some number, to join your group on Loomio, and you get this email or this message pop up saying you've successfully invited count users. In English, there are two entries here. There's one or other, and IATN is smart in that it goes, oh, the number count is 1, so then we will use the singular sort of translation. And if it's more than 1, then we use other, which is the many version. Some languages like Indonesian and Vietnamese and a number of others, there's no difference. Other is the same as 1. There's no plural or singular. It's just like 1 banana, 2 banana, 3. That's maybe a good example. But you can't say 5 bananas in Indonesian. It's just always 5 banana or 5 invitation. So this will also break the app, so you need to watch out for that. And Transifex doesn't, like if you have the 1 key missing, if you don't have this here, it's gone. If you don't have this here, it'll kill the app. So it's gotcha. There's a workaround for that. I'm going to move on though.
So you're using the workaround? Because I don't see the 1 key in the other.
Yeah, it's hidden over here.
Okay, that's fine.
So
hang on, are you pointing out something that's completely broken?
There's probably a nicer way of doing this, but I've just got all the 1 keys over here in another file. So as long as it's got the same sort of structure, it will just like weave these in and it's trying to read everything.
Well, zips.
Huh? It zips, pretty much zips, yeah. 1 mini, other notes. So there was a question about so downloading all the YAML files from Transifex was a drag. They've got a nice API. So here's one, I wrote a little rake file which just goes get all the Transifex, how many languages do you have? This many. And then it's like, oh my god, yo. Yeah. Give me the languages. And then it's like, color. Yeah, maybe. Colorizers. Yeah, nice. And there are, each language has, at the moment, 2 language files. There's one separately for the front page to keep that isolated, and one for the main body of the app. I'd advise doing that, and maybe doing that even further, because it means your core functionality can be separate from your sort of baggage, nice help text, for example, or proper text, yeah. So that's a nice rake file. I also wrote one recently as well, and I just broke the code so that I could demo this. I went and broke a translation. So here's an example of a translator who is they either haven't understood interpolation and the importance of it, or they have understood it, but it's just a typo. And I've just got it cycling through all the translations, comparing English and, in this case, Spanish. And it's highlighted that this space is going to kill the app, and it's just some regex, blah, blah, blah. And then I've made this nice thing where you can just link directly to transifex, find the offending translation, and just fix it. Yeah, so there are little things that can make managing this kind of clunky system a little bit easier.
Yeah, I was wondering about running automated tests with a particular for each locale, and that way you catch them before they go.
Yeah. So this is something else. We've got Travis running tests on Loomio, but we don't have it doing per locale.
Right. Yeah. Seems like it would.
Probably a good idea, but again, haven't got to it yet.
Yeah.
It's a great
found problems with it? Or is that something that's not moving towards issues?
Occasionally. Occasionally we'll just get an error email, which is production will be the front page just broke, and then you just go, oh, okay, quickly fix. And we're kind of at a stage of growth where we can kind of sustain that, especially if it's in a market that we're still developing and it's enthusiasts.
Only have some kind of hero notification service.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Your site is broken, it's down for Spanish, all of that. Yeah.
One thing I want to kind of interject with it, I've been investigating this and haven't got that far with it yet, but I saw an article where they caught the exception if the key was missing, and there's a way to then dump that into a YAML file, so you have a separate file with things that are missing, and if you extend that to include CI, you then have basically a file on CI that your entire app's been tapped, and it's telling you what you're missing out of in which particular language.
Yeah, totally.
So I will link to that when I find it again.
Couldn't you just puzzle the DLT files together? You got the T and some stuff after it, and then look up the...
Yeah, if you do the shorthand trick of not using the full key, it starts being real difficult.
Yeah, so this is where I'm gonna go through some existing solutions which kind of cover that. They're sort of aside to this talk, there are two gems that might be worth a look. One is 18 tasks. My computer's just run out of battery. One of them is 18 tasks, and that has a bunch of rake-like tasks which automate that sort of thing. Like you've got missing keys, or these keys aren't used anymore. Why do you still translate them? Just really useful stuff like that. And the open source community is rad. Exactly the same problem. There are different ways to call translation. So T or translate or 18.t in different contexts with emails. It gets a little bit complicated sometimes. And I said hey, we're using symbols as our keys instead of strings. Can you? And it was just instantly done. So
is it worth doing that for the symbols? Just on a side note?
I think so. I'm not sure I haven't done. So 18 in tasks. There's another one which is called 18 in viz. I think computer's gone. Which will let you in a development environment. It just inserts JavaScript everywhere, and then you can hover over a particular piece of text, and it will give you a tooltip which says this is the key that you are looking for. So it makes looking things up in the back end easier. In the last 2 days, Transifex has just brought out a beta product called Transifex Live, which is just completely JavaScript. You just put this one line of JavaScript in your site, and it allows live translating of your site, and you don't have to deal with any of this YAML stuff. So that'll be really interesting to play with and see how robust that is. This is just one solution. It's really simple, quite accessible. You can go down a database route. There are advantages and disadvantages of that. There are PO files and POP files. I don't know what they are, and MO files. Not sure. I started reading and was like, nah. Yeah. So that's basically it. Any questions?
The old Unix way out there with your files and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I don't know.
One thing that's really worth mentioning is that I18N is an old programmer trick where if a word is far too long to pronounce all the time or to write down, you put the beginning letter, the end letter, and then the number of letters in between. So that's what I18N means.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, internationalisation.
Internationalisation, yeah. It's like,
Down to the most. So the
Yeah.
programmers are lazy.
accessibility is sometimes a something Y,
Algorithm.
a reason why.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is
In the grant,
obviously
yeah.
not accessible. So yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions or amendments?
Has anyone tried to make a better internationalization framework on top of this?
Probably.
Good answer.
Not that I know of. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't done a lot of research.
Oh, okay. Not fair enough. Because it's the stem like the country from. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's good enough.
And the docs say, like, this is literally the simplest we could build it. Like.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool.